Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. 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 Artlist.io. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing.
All right, welcome to I think late night, maybe potentially early morning if you got some Australians in the crowd, stream of PFL. For those that do not know me, have not seen me, I'm the least qualified streamer we have in the community, but maybe the most passionate about sharing information that I think I know, whether or not I even know it for a fact, in the community as well. Stan's chief dictator and chief of absolute horsepower, which is somewhere in the lower level of the top 10 in earnings, slightly modest, stable. It's been a couple weeks since I streamed. I was on a couple LSU field trips, hence the pullover this week. I saw them lose in Tuscaloosa. And I saw them win in Baton Rouge back-to-back weeks. Normally, that wouldn't be a feat worth accomplishing, but when you live in Minnesota and you've seen more LSU football games in the last 10 years than Gopher football games by like a 10-to-1 ratio, it feels worth calling out. The point of the stream was to call it 4 hours ago, review what was in the blog that was slated to be released yesterday or today. We didn't get that. Maybe it comes tomorrow. Maybe it even comes tonight yet. Maybe it comes Monday, Sunday, whatever day it comes. That's really what I wanted to cover. But since it's been so long since we chatted, and I plan to chat with you all Monday morning when we reveal our retirees, reveal our foals from this last crop, talk about expectations of how we plan to breed. It feel like a good time to level set expectations, talk about what we've learned since we last chatted, and kind of map out a plan for the next week. So he's in the background. He's not sharing his screen. RVA is here. I'm going to wait for him to acknowledge that he's here. And I'll bring him on stage. But absent that, bullet point number one, Mo knows. Mo knows. He actually knows. 6'3". So is the door short or am I tall? Could it be the angle? Could it be my three necks or three chins that make one neck? Tough to discern, but 6'3" is the actual height. Sup, B-Rad. Trot on. Big fan always. Local Top Hat. One of my favorite people in the community. Everybody is sleeping on Local Top Hat. Everybody wants to talk about Foal. Like how great Foal is. Where are my Local Top Hat fanboys? Like, just a fucking beauty in the community. Always wants to hear what people actually think, not what people actually say. And then Sowers is acknowledging the royalty-free music. Of course. Why wouldn't anybody do that? Jesus, we got Rolo in here. Guys, this was short notice. This was not supposed to be. Yeah, and can't believe all the stuff on the blog. It's hard to believe. I mean, I think we can. What if we write the blog on stream? We can use ChatGPT. I don't have like the latest edition of ChatGPT, but if we talk about like community sentiment enough times, and we manifest what the blog would actually contain, and then if we write it and it works, do they just have to adopt it, or do they get their own way? I don't know. Top hat's blushing. Understood. Oh, sorry. Cybernex is in the audience as well. About time you stream again. Almost as lazy as me over here. Yeah, I mean, it was a hard thing. Like, I don't want to stream when I don't know things, and I don't want to stream when there's not things to talk about, because as bad of a streamer as I am, I feel like when I stream, it should be informative. And if I don't feel like there's something I can inform anybody on, then there's no point streaming. So I try to get that. Brought on, we have a horse named Not For Sale. It's an LTS. It's the only LTS from 01 of ones that is an S colt. And it wasn't just you. And I need to do a better job of kind of just putting my foot down a little bit. It's super hard not being in the Discord to try to convey your thoughts. We've got snowmen. We are in the north, but as far as it goes, like, that horse is probably never moving anywhere, and that doesn't mean it's going to be a good racer. We can talk about that a little bit tonight if RVA ever shows up, because he got one too. So realistically, not just because RVA is in the audience, but I felt like there was two really unique colt outcomes this last crop. So not what we'll see on Monday, but this last crop that had really interesting breeding prospects. But the breeding prospects are because their lack of one-on-ones, or what one-on-ones they used, more so than they're going to be good racers. I bet they're both dog shit racers. Mine, RVA's, total dog shit racers. But I don't think that that's going to matter in the grand scheme of things. And I don't mean that it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things of the preference Nazis are going to pay us to breed with them anyways, because I kind of wish the preference Nazis wouldn't just fucking pay to breed with preferences because they're preferences. I think they're going to suck because they outkick their coverage, which I'm still waiting to do in my real life. But horses that have outkicked their coverage in this game so far in live, in my own opinion, have not been good racers. The horses that have been good racers are the one that you say, fuck, how did that end up being A+, or why was it an S- and not an S? Those are the good racers. So as long as we separate like what your realistic expectations are from racing and breeding, then I think you can get a better understanding of where we are in the meta that we have, because preferences are still reigning supreme. We get an A+ sale for a little over 5,000 within the last 24 hours. It's a bit much, but let me try to get caught up on chat here before we dive in too far. How many people asked me about Not For Sale? Probably a half dozen, and realized I'm a hard guy to get a hold of because I'm not in the Discord. Shout out to Bryce. Rumor has it, best third-time moderator we've ever had. Not sure if he can play bass guitar, but I'm all for adding talent in the moderator crowd. How much have you all made from photo finish? Well, that's a very personal question. Like, you wouldn't ask that to your boss, I don't think. You might ask it to your buddy. So from like a buddy to buddy standpoint of like, if I'm in accounting and you're in marketing and you want to talk about like, you know, how's your job going? Do you feel like you can move up? Do you make as much as I read in these blogs that accountants make? Yeah, we're doing okay, Foam. We're doing okay. And we do have an advantage. We were here early. We were here mostly the entire time. No, we did not mint. If we would have minted, we'd probably doing a little bit better than we're doing, but we're doing okay. As far as how everybody else is doing, I think everybody else is doing okay. Like right now, the game is working for everybody. I think it's been really hard for anybody to have made a bad purchase. And this is not me saying go buy everything. Like I think we can dive into it a little bit. Someone remind me in like a half hour to review Eddie from Pocono in our stable, because I think we've achieved similar things this season, but we've done it like completely differently. And just because there might not be a bad purchase this month doesn't mean there can't be a bad purchase next month, doesn't mean there can't be a bad purchase 3 months from now. Like just taking all the information you can get, and don't get FOMO because I'm making or anybody else is making what we're making. I'm FOMO. Most of the stuff is public. You can look to see what we're making. Like make informed decisions. I'm here to try to help you make informed decisions. You're not going to catch us. You're not going to catch Pocono. The person that's tried the most to catch Pocono and us is Tad. And, you know, someday we'll maybe do that stream of top 5, top 10 stables. And we'll see where Tad fits into the Sten's power rankings. RVA says he's here, but I don't think he's here. I'll get through chat and I'll try to bring him up. For 10K Derby or 12K Derby. Nothing wrong with that. I would rather you start there than telling me you bought a horse for 400K and not know what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, as much as JJ rips on the team, he's gotten some pieces for sure. I tried telling him that he can't even use this colt because it's from his own bloodlines. So he should actually put it in good hands. And if it's not me, it might as well go to Sir Brad. Like one of us can actually use that piece appropriately, and it's not the JJ. Shout out to David. Long-standing member, biggest Crown believer that I know of, and in these last couple of weeks, it seems as if I've been proven wrong on Crown a little bit. So kudos to everybody that is held, built, continues to accumulate a Crown bag. Our stance is more or less unchanged on Crown, but that doesn't necessarily mean we don't believe that it has a use case in the ecosystem. Our belief is that for every Crown we sell, we can probably better use that within our own stable. Crypto Hog. RVA does get all the luck. Completely agree. They'll make millions at the breeding barn. This is, I mean, maybe we do get into this tonight. I didn't envision this to be a long stream, but there probably does need to be conversations about like realistic expectations in the breeding barn as well. Bryce is the best moderator. And he asked for the Ron Burgundy meme, but he doesn't even realize the connection to in PFL. So Kaker, who he would know, had a horse named Ron Burgundy. He sold it to us. It's in the breeding barn. We can pull it up. It's a bit of a donkey. I think it's been bred with a couple times, but as many times as he says, come see how good I look in the breeding barn, it doesn't get hit a ton. But yeah, if you want the Ron Burgundy memes, we've got the Ron Burgundy horse. Fucking billions. Yeah, maybe. Let's see what else we got. I still don't see RVA, but we might just have to fucking trust it. You there, RVA? It looks fucking black. It looks black.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch. I'll try to. I was lazy. I didn't want to go on pull the laptop out.
You didn't want to turn the lights on or your power out?
No, the cam says it's on. For some reason it's not showing. So you can tell it goes between these. So it's like just not working.
This is great streaming content, though. Keep it. Tell us more about your struggles during the stage.
Yes. Yeah. What's up? I am finally here to defend myself. I don't think that there's any luck being had at RVA racing. I don't know what you're talking about.
How many times did you have to breed? So you got is it from an S filly or is it from an S minus filly?
Which?
The S plus.
The S plus was 2 Gen 1s. So it was an S minus with an S minus got an S.
Okay.
And then an S.
Seems like luck. Seems like luck.
And then an S and an S got an S plus.
Seems like luck as well. Like if we're doing an average.
The S minus filly has bred however many seasons it is. So this is Gen 0. It's only bred with an S one time, and it made an S minus. Every other time it's bred with an S minus and made an S. So it's probably just a really good filly. So
we can talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, 4 out of 5.
I do want you to throw up your Clanosaur, or if you want to use PFL JPEG or something if you can't get your stream up, but I can hear you good on audio, so we can continue. But I mean, we could talk a little bit about that too, because as far as things that I think I know versus things I know, we had a horse and we no longer have this horse, and that's why I actually feel probably better talking about it. I don't like talking about horses that I have. Where would it have gone? I don't even know who got it. We sold the major winner this past weekend, Juniper Infused, but I do not know which barn it ended up in. Let me find it. It went to Bobby Boucher's. I'll share my screen here. Oh, now I got you. Yeah, you're on multiple screens here. Hold on, I'm gonna get rid of that one. I'll bring you up here. Can you hear me now? Can you see me now? I can't hear you, but I can see you. It's like the opposite.
Yep.
All right. Oh my God.
Got it.
We made it, the JJ. It only took us like 12 minutes to get together, but we made it. God. So you were saying it wasn't luck. You did not luck box your way into
no, the S plus is luck box for sure. No, that was a straight lie. You couldn't see my face that I was laughing while I said it, but no, it was like the breeding report. I have those. It looked like it should have been a borderline S. So I agree with you. It probably isn't the best racer. I don't care at that point. For breeding purposes, like it had to have hit multiple very good wicks. I expect some cool shit to reveal on it for sure. The preferences are weaker, considering it has no 1 of 1s. But yeah, I mean, I think is it 4.5, 5? I don't even know. I should know that, but I honestly don't.
Just tough counting all of your riches. No, but where I was gonna say, like, maybe it's not luck, and I don't know. Like, this is my best evidence. I'm streaming my best evidence.
Yep.
And I had a conversation with some people in a private chat yesterday, because people ask us about horses, and a lot of times I'll tell them, like, here's your pick list. Like, here are the fillies that I'm not going to sell any offspring off of. But I don't know that they're good. They were good Gen 0 assets. We don't need to sell things. So I'm predisposed to not want to sell those things.
Right.
But they keep asking about other horses. And are they asking about other horses because those horses are good? Or are they asking about other horses because those horses weren't on my do not ask me about list?
Mm-hmm.
And most of that has come up at like LTS and other archetypes. But most people that watch this stream realize that we named all of our Gen Zero fillies using like the top 3,000 baby names for females in the United States, at least. Juniper would have to be pretty low on that list. And if we're going to get into the science of the naming convention, which I think everybody's here to understand the science of the naming convention, is if I'm going to name horses after females, I would try to make the best horses after like the most obvious female names. So we did Diana was like our prominent S minus. We did Hazel, which was a really good A plus. We did Violet, which was a very good A plus. Juniper as a female name kind of sounds like it sucks as a female name. So it was pretty low on our Gen Zero roster. So if you understand that logic of how we named horses, this is where we are. But that said, we've got 5 years of offspring from Juniper, which is an A plus from the infamous 4999 sire. Call it 3.5 plus a half is 4, 6 preference. Nothing crazy. Not even 7 preferences at the A plus level. The horse itself ran 3 times. It won once, did nothing else. You go to progeny, the 4-year-old only ran 4 times. Call that user error, won once. But then you get to the 3-year-old level. 30 starts, it wins 10, 33% win rate. I can do that math. Finishes in the top 3 a little over half the time. And these, I mean, this 30 starts is different than your Gen Zero starts. But this is 12 horse fields in large part. Yeah. And then the 2-year-old has raced 13 times and has won about, it's won about 50% of the time. And has hit the board 11 out of 13 times. Again, same thing, full fields, 12 horse races, and is not missing the board very often. So the 4-year-old's not telling me anything because I didn't race it very much. The Gen Zero's not telling me anything because I didn't race it very much. The rest can't tell me anything because they can't race. But I'm starting to wonder if my do not ask me about this horse list is the wrong list because that was based on preferences or total boost within a given archetype. And could we instead have horses that didn't have crazy preferences? Again, this is a 6 preference A plus RTF that has made an S minus that's won a major, and actually the 2-year-old probably is the better horse of the two. And the other 2 that we have here, I mean, this 1-year-old is from Better Than Most, your sire. That might be a good horse. I don't know who the 0-year-old is from, to be honest with you. Mercury. So this would be a run back. This would be the second iteration of the horse that just won the RTF major. So that's a long way of saying, if you would have asked me to buy a foal from Violet or Hazel, some of those names we dropped off Diana, I'd either laughed you off or just tried to explain, yes, we need to sell horses, but not those horses. But in hindsight, do we have a couple that are maybe better and I just didn't realize it at the time? So yours is Juju, right? That's the one that's made all the magic happen?
Yeah.
One could say it's got the Juju. Let's see what we got. No, I promise to get caught up on chat eventually. I see RV is
you don't have to
at
scroll
my
down
expense.
there to like be able to type that in, right?
Just deal with it. Just deal with it. This is
Trying to
if
save
you
you
want
from-
good streamers, you go to MJ or Mo or Doughboy. If you want like late night waiting for a blog content, you come here. Okay.
Bloodline.
Juju. S minus. Jesus. Do you see how bad Diana's bloodline is?
There's no matches. Like click the Gen Zero. up top.
Yeah, I got you. Not
Yeah.
great, Bob. Not
No.
great.
Not nothing
Six
special.
preference. Maybe six preference is the new 9 preference. Can we talk the preference Nazis into that?
Yeah, it
Can
rolls
we
up. Like you
convince
said,
them?
I have other S minuses that are better. You've had, I mean, you talked about Diana. It basically was as high of an S minus as you could get, and it hasn't rolled up to S. And like I said, every single one of those S's has come from an S minus sire. So maybe there are some fillies that just fucking rule at breeding.
And I don't know. So I mean, if we're gonna compare these apples to apples, what I was showing was horses that had really on the track, really good performances. And where this one probably differs a little bit is the on the track performance isn't great. Like no one's writing home about 1 win and 12 starts and 5 out of 12 on the podium, or 1 out of 25, which is 8 out of 20.
I'm guessing it has good temper or something. Like, it doesn't suck, but it's not it's not winning a ton.
So how is it? So yeah, how is yours breeding up consistently, where mine is winning consistently? And is there a pattern to one or the other? Because in my opinion, if you're taking an S minus and you're using S minus colts most of the time, right? You've got 5 here. How many of them would have been with S minuses versus S's?
Yeah, I think, and I told you this, and I think I might even said it on one of the streams, but like I do try not to get caught up on global grade, right? Like we've seen a couple S pluses now that have raced like dog shit, and we've seen S minuses win major. So try not to get 100% caught up on the global grade. But I think from the racing standpoint, I do think while you may see some of these horses jump, and it may be just because one thing is pulling it way up, I do believe personally, nothing to back this up with, I don't think you want the huge outlier is really good for the breeding barn. For racing, I think you still need a good stat for across the board. Like even if you're a 12 furlong horse, you don't want a start for a graded stakes racer, right? Like you still have to, like it still comes into the race math at some point. So I think while getting an outlier is very nice for the breeding barn, I think there are cases where you would rather just have like a really uniform across the board for racing stats. Yeah, you still want the right pops. Like if you have an S horse, you still want to have like S plus and stam and finish for a longer distance, for example, but you don't want that like downgrade somewhere.
You have high expectations for the S plus as a racer, because I mean it can go both ways. I'm not trying to set you up to fight yourself. At the end of the day, we have like 4 S pluses total at RTF. Most of them have actually aged a bit. Like there's not any in this class. I don't think that you're.
I think Big Brain got one this same
Monkey Tennis might have got one as well.
Yeah, so there's a handful coming. What was the original ask? I'm sorry, I blanked there.
Do you think it's going to be a good racer because it's an S plus with what 4.5 preferences?
I've shared the breeding report, I believe, with you on stream before, but I honestly do think it will race well, and it's just because of looking at the breeding report. It was so far from like the average even being it teetered on being an S minus or an S on the breeding report from like the gray boxes. So to roll to S plus, I do think it can overcome having the 4.5 preferences, especially if those are at sprinting distance, because as we know, speed is lacked in right turf. So if it got some crazy, I like that. If it got a good speed and start wick, then it could fucking mop up the field with 5 preferences. So I'll take over 5 races. That's actually probably a hard number to beat just because it's only going to race one season. Like there's just no way I don't retire this horse. after its 2-year-old season. So five's probably a lot, but based on the breeding report, I think there just has to be some major wicks. And if it happens to be at speed and start, then I think it'll be one of the best racers at right turf.
And since no one's ever disagreed with GVG about anything, I want to give you the chance to disagree with GVG, and that he thinks speed has like the tightest radials on any breeding report, realistically, tightest box and whiskers.
Right.
Like your speed is your speed. That's the combination of the two horses. There's really no margin for error. Mm-hmm. I've since added that I believe finish acts the same way as speed does in those breeding reports. But then you can see spaces like start in particular for sure. Sometimes stamina, sometimes heart, sometimes temper that have like these wide range of outcomes. Yep. So if you were to pick like where you hit wicks on, because you said like the average outcome could have even been an S minus or probably should have been an S at best.
Right.
Obviously you wick. Do you think you wicked because you hit like the very top end of those like crazy outliers like start? Or
yeah, I just sent you the report. I don't know if it's easier to talk through this so everyone in the chat can see as well. But yeah, heart is the biggest wick, which I think we've seen. I think heart and start are, like to GVG's point, I think they're the easiest ones to have the widest ranges. But if you look, there's definitely a chance that horse could have been an S minus. As well, but pretty good chance at an S, bringing two S's together. But there, speed again, because all speed in right turf is bad. But it does wick, pretty far on everything compared. I think, and it's not very.
No,
tight.
It does. I would say that. I mean, this might be anybody that's never watched me stream before, and you've got 74 hours in a day. Like, go watch the prior streams. Like, I broke down like minute differences.
Yeah, he's gone way deep on these.
Yep. And this is one of the first times I would say like you couldn't tell me the box and whiskers on any of these individual stats other than heart is like meaningfully different than the rest. Like, right. Sure, the box might be a little bit bigger. Sure, this
like speed average is obviously lower to start, but I think it can wick just as far from the average. Like normally you'll see that some that are just much more compressed. So that's that on the like that's what makes me think like to get to an S plus, like how many of those had to go crazy? Like at least 2 went crazy, and then everything else hit average.
And do you still believe, or did you ever believe, it was impossible to hit 6 wicks and impossible to hit 6 wicks to the negative? Like if you hit 3 wicks to the positive, did you have to have like mediocre outcomes?
Just an accountant, not a big math guy. So don't ask me this.
You're not even a mediocre math guy. We've been over this.
No, we've covered that. So I don't know. I don't know the stats on like what percent chance that really would be. We've obviously had thousands of breeds at this point. I'm sure it's possible. I don't like mathematically, but I don't know. Like that just seems like it's probably such a rare occurrence to hit all 6. I also just think like, how bad would it break the game if 6 months in we had an SSS horse, right? Like, not saying that's on this graph. I mean, we've seen some. Commissioner shared some. Right there is a crazy animal that operates on a completely different playing field than we do over in right turf in terms of like how long these horses are. So if everything hit at once and all of a sudden you had an SSS minus horse or something like 8 months in, like that kind of fucking would break the game a little bit, just from a breeding standpoint. I don't know. Maybe break the game's harsh. Maybe that's not truly the case because it still does have to retire and you wouldn't be racing against it. And everyone have an equal opportunity to hit it as long as they put it on the the public barn. So I don't know. That might be a little bit far, but I feel like
you're backtracking and being very wishy-washy here, Vijay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so I think you could, but I don't know. I guess if I have to go one way or another, I would say no. I don't think that there's a way to like just absolutely jump 6 grades in one breed. I don't think that's possible.
I think I tend to agree.
But if it happens, I'm happy for it to happen in my barn for science. I think we lost you, or I did.
Age 3-year-old. I can see my picture, so hopefully things are back now.
It's back now. Yep.
I still am. We're getting close to the point where I could argue we shouldn't. I would never argue that you shouldn't, because like once you consider the law of large numbers and compounding fillies, like it's really hard for you to argue that you shouldn't. But at the end of the day, for us, like what's one more filly? Like it's not that big of a deal. And if I thought the horse could win something meaningful and I truly cared a lot about winning something meaningful, then at that point I would probably hold a filly out. So if I got this next coming crop on Monday, if I got an S plus at RTF or LTS, I don't expect either. But if I did, yeah, we'd probably race it through the 3-year-old season at this point, because we don't need to retire it, and retiring it doesn't really gain us anything, because what we're seeing with the S pluses is you got them, they're great. Sometimes they're not even great racers. We've seen S minuses beat S pluses on the track, given distance preference or just kind of not a great stat distribution on the S plus. But if you got that, at some point you're making a sacrifice in determining like you're gonna have to breed down. So you had one great S plus. Like, did you enjoy it?
I think Right Turf
or
is a
do you move
perfect
forward?
example. Otani hasn't been retired. That's a female 4-year-old. Won a ton for Wolof. And the logical thinking behind that is there wasn't a stud to hit, right? Like you're basically going to get an S out of it. Best case is an S filly. An S colt would be, not a better, not better. But yeah, I think in Right Dirt, like obviously there's so many options, like with all these different primetime breeds, and you had all the 101s and yada yada yada. But yeah, they're definitely, for me, I was gonna say they're like, I'm not at the same level as you in terms of like how many are popping out each month. But there's just something about having a winner. Like at the end of the day, like everything's gone so great the first however many months it is now, 7-8 months. But like nothing beats having a winner. I mean, I know you were busy at the football game, so I don't even know if you watched the one on Saturday, but like the purses are getting up there. That's what it's all about. So like even if it's a filly, like you don't get like killers every time, even in a stable that's breeding 60-70 horses a month. They don't come around all the time. So yeah, to your point, it's like, could you retire it and have a better horse? Sure, but we've also seen horses have bad outcomes, right? Like we've seen variance to the downside, so there's not a guarantee that you're going to get a killer racer from that filly for retiring it. So I think it definitely is getting to the point, as we fill out the population, where like you definitely have to think twice about retiring everything if it's a proven winner.
So then, I mean, that's a fairly natural segue, and shout out to Bryce for being here, but also confirming we're not going to get the blog. Some of us doubted we were going to get the blog today. We won't name names. I was one of those names, but as long as we get it and we get information that we can act on in a timely fashion, I don't care too much. So the horse that won the Right Turf Major this past weekend, you're right, I didn't even watch the race. I was transfixed on Shaquille O'Neal and trying to think, like, could I dunk on him? Probably not. But he was right there 20 feet out in front of me. Like, who's to say? If there was a basketball hoop there, it's possible. But Juniper Infused, we talked about the bloodline quite a bit. It's an S minus. It's a 3-year-old. Shout out to Bobby Boucher's, who's in the chat. And what I learned after listing and selling this horse is the undercard for the Kentucky Derby this weekend does contain a race that this horse probably will win. So you can actually factor that into your calculus of like, okay, you bought a horse for, call it, what is that, like $3,500, a little more than that. almost 4K. How do you pay this horse back? And I want everybody in the audience to understand, like, not every horse is going to pay itself back. Can this horse pay itself back? Probably. It depends on the intent and how it's used and what other variables are at play. So this horse has like a crazy good race coming up this weekend. I'll pull that up as well. This will give Bobby Boucher, if he didn't already know exactly where he should race this horse. But if we go to G1s and you can see the undercard for Saturdays, like, make sure you don't race it outside, so you couldn't get into this race. So you got two options. You probably take the 0% rein. The other one is probably better distance match, but it's 60% rein. So you've got 80K purses for 14 horse races. You pick your poison. I would take the 0%. If you're not the favorite to win that race, your top two, even being an S minus. Then things get a little more tricky. Then it becomes a 4-year-old. I would assume Bobby Boucher is going to race this horse. If I own this horse next season, I would race this horse. The team has told us that peak racing age, on average, horses reach their peak at, was it 3.5, and it lasts through 5.5, or something along those lines. Don't quote me. If a JJ wants to correct me, he can correct me on that. I do not know the specifics on that.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, it's going to be a 4-year-old. So does a 4-year-old beat a newly turned 3-year-old? So a newly turned 4-year-old beat a newly turned 3-year-old? Logic would suggest yes, if what they told us about kind of the average aging curve is correct. You would think a new 4-year-old would beat a new 3-year-old. But there's like three things at play there. If this horse was good as a 2-year-old, which it was, and it was good as a 3-year-old, which it is this horse in particular have a slightly early aging curve? So if we're saying the average is this, but is Juniper infused like move forward of that, and that's why as an S minus it could beat S's. This is all speculation, but if it was moved forward and it was an earlier peak, does it fall off earlier as well? Those are considerations I took into play. The other part of that is, we had the Gen Zeros and RIP, at least from a track standpoint. Gen Zeros on Monday, they're not going to race anymore. But it seemed like the Gen Zeros had a lot of lasting power as racers. And the team had told us they'd pegged the peak age on Gen Zeros at like 4.5 years old, which was like the true midpoint or whatever. But it didn't seem like they fell off very much. And no one knows, myself, no one else knows, like, will Gen 1s kind of have that same tailing off effect in a good way? Or will it be a steeper decline because there are no longer Gen Zeros, they're no longer special? So I think this horse is going to be a really good racer as a 4-year-old because it's still kind of within that window that the team has prescribed. But then the other factor you have to consider is, like, every time I retire and breed a filly, it's a better subgrade than its original dam. So are we getting this S minus that was great? Is this great S minus no longer special anymore because there are several more S minuses? So even if this horse is a newly turned 4-year-old, could beat newly turned 3-year-olds, were the newly turned 3-year-olds just better assets across the board such that it could overcome the age disparity? So I think there are considerations like that, and that gets to like PFL 1101, which I know some people tune into, not everybody tunes into here, but there are things that make me question how long I personally want to hold a colt for. And that doesn't mean that this isn't a stupendous buy because, like I said, I think it's going to be great through the 4-year-old season. My questions are: is it a good 5-year-old racer? And then question 2 is: how does Bobby Boucher or whoever Bobby Boucher sells this horse to, how do they use the horse breeding? Because this horse is from Mercury, which is our sire, which is in the breeding barn for 16,000. So if he puts this in the breeding barn for 4,000, he can undercut Mercury and he can maybe get breeds that way because it's Mercury blood. It's won a major. Can he sell out 35 at 4K? Then all of a sudden you're working on how to pay off that price through the breeding barn. Or does he have 5 to 10 RTF or RTS fillies he can use with it, or can he sell it to someone that has 5 to 10 RTF or RTS fillies to use? But those are the considerations I'm making. I know the sale itself made some waves because, I mean, that's a big number for an S minus, but it also is, 3 days away from winning $1,400 in a race. So, your thoughts?
Yeah,
and I'll get back to Bobby Boucher's question in chat. I will.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. He doesn't have to be the last one to own the horse. It has a long life ahead of it. I wouldn't be shocked if at some point, now that Gen Zero are off the track, we get some sort of I don't know what the right word is, like older horses race, like blocked off by age. So we have juvenile racing. I don't know what the right term is in horse racing, but we might get something that's gated for like 7 and 8 year old horses, and then all of a sudden it's the best horse in its bracket again. Like, we don't know. Maybe the blog details some of that. Maybe that's getting too far ahead of ourselves. And then the breeding value, like you said, it's a proven winner. It's probably got some sort of outlier stat. There's, I think there's more fillies in right turf firm than any other archetype. So there's plenty of them coming up that'll need to be used in the breeding barn. And if I hadn't bred with Mercury myself 15 times the season prior, I probably would have snatched that horse up myself. Like you said, just to use for breeding. So there's going to be plenty of other people that will want to use it. And I think there's multiple avenues. Like we said, like, what if you as soon as you get 200K in earnings back, you can throw in a 100K claimer. Or what if we get 250K claimers added next week? Like, there's a lot of different stuff that can happen to where, like, all of a sudden that horse is not only capable of winning money back, but it's not that this isn't the right term, but like, it's liquid. Like, there's a way to like actually just like cut it out, cut it from your stable rather quickly, for lack of better terms.
No, I think that's fair. And I think the one thing neither of us really hammered home, and that's probably because we're nits and we're accountants and we're just like risk averse in general and we don't like to take big swings. But there's also something to be said for a horse that can just fucking win. Like, in our stable, I can't speak for yours, we race a lot of horses, and over the lot of horses that we race, like, I know my win percentage is going to be roughly X. I know I'll hit the board roughly Y, and it all washes out to some like clean results that I'm content with. But if I only had a couple horses, or I just said, like, I'm not a nit, I'm not an accountant, I just want to fucking win races, like, that's actually a horse that can actually win some fucking races. So, I mean, that's the other aspect too. And those are the type of people I hope we attract. I hope we get less nits like you and I am speaking for both of us in that sense. But
yeah, I mean, for sure.
Congrats to the buyer, for sure.
A lot of people were here early. We stuck around for 2 years, not knowing when we would ever make a cent back. Like, I think that mentality is slowly, I don't want to say fading away, but like, I've definitely been looser in like how I go about stuff. And like you said, going from absolutely retiring every affiliate to make more assets that hopefully can make more, like, to then be able to race one. Like, I think that's coming. I mean, it's it's definitely feels like we've been here forever at times, but it still is very early, and I think it's at a strong spot right now in terms of getting out of that mentality of like I need to completely min max this thing, so that my wife doesn't kill me. Like you're getting to that point where like, oh, this is like a real not only an investment, but it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's a business for some people, it's a hobby for other people. Like there's just so many different ways to go about it, and that we do need to attract all sorts of types, even the crown holders that never even stake it on the track, right? The people that are buying and trading it. Like there's just so many different ways to get involved with this project, and we so far I think have done a good job attracting them, and there's plenty more, tons more room to grow in that regard.
Yeah. Closing the loop on Juniper Infuse, and we can move on to the next subject. But Brad in the chat had suggested SS Heart, maybe with the huge variance. I don't think so, because if I want to say like something hit like some crazy outlier stat, and in particular Heart, which we've associated with like majors or 20 horse races or both, to me that would suggest the horse wouldn't have won otherwise if it wouldn't have been a 20 horse race, or it wouldn't have been a major, where this horse had won 33% of the time, including the major. But the horse was winning. It didn't matter what the field size was. So I actually don't think Heart was it can't have bad Heart. I would agree with that, but I don't think Heart is its best stat. Bobby,
yeah, if they're going just based on breeding reports, stamina was definitely Mercury's thing. He had good wicks there, so.
Sorry, Brad wants to correct him. You give him a chance. Gotcha. Bobby says he's racing him. I think that's the right solution. I think you race him through the 4-year-old season. I think as a buyer of it, unless you have fillies to use for it, you almost probably have to race him through the 5-year-old season as well. That's a little bit risky. So in the 5-year-old season, do you want to race them in claimers? Hopefully we get higher entry fee claimers. Again, I had intended to stream today, 2 days ago, because I thought we were going to get the blog. And I did think a big feature of the blog would be about claimers and expansion of kind of that band of what the claim amount is and ways you could expand the claim amount without breaking the crown mechanics or breaking entry fee mechanics. So what do I think his hidden stat line is? You say stamina. Yeah, maybe. I mean, to win at 10, it seems like we think finish is actually longer than 10 furlongs. So for him to win at 10 and be pretty reliable at 10, stamina, and I would say stamina and finish, but yeah, maybe stamina is the best.
I bet it has S speed too, which
it could, because no other horses have S speed, so that kind of just pushes it over the top a little bit.
Definitely not many S minuses. It's normally never a higher subgrade than the overall grade at speed, but I could see that being the case maybe.
Okay,
sure.
So
I think on that, I think I'm going to drop. It is a little bit later here than you, but thanks for having me on. Sorry for the technical difficulties to start, but I'm off next Tuesday, so I might be free to go over some stuff if there's any plans for anyone to stream on Tuesday, not Monday.
Why do you not have Monday off? You're supposed to have Friendsgiving with your high school friends on Monday, Friendsgiving with your like college friends Tuesday, Friendsgiving with like your local friends,
the wife neighborhood friends on when Wednesday. We do stuff. That's right.
Sounds like a shitty situation, but I wish you the best on that. And I appreciate you joining me tonight. So,
all right, see ya.
See you later. All right, I won't keep the rest of you guys too long. I do want to get to bullet points 3 and 4 that we'd put in Twitter to not tease. We'll maybe try to go, let's call it I'll say 20 minutes, which will mean 30 minutes. If you got questions, now is the time in chat. So bullet point 3 was blog hopes, wishes, or expectations. I've alluded to it a little bit. I've definitely talked at length about it in prior streams on how do we find a race for every horse that exists. Keep in mind, my bias is that we have a lot of S's and S minuses, particularly a lot of S minuses and some A pluses, where it's really hard for us to race those horses given the current slate of races. And part of that is if we race our fillies and A plus restricteds, where do we race our A plus colts? Similar conversation at the S minus level. Now the A plus is in the current kind of allowance meta. There are races that only give a 1 pound advantage over the A pluses. The S minuses never really gain that advantage. They can have the sort of math of each subgrade. So A to A plus is 2 pounds, A plus to A or S minus is 2 pounds. They can be on an equal footing, but they never ever have the advantage that the S pluses can particularly have. So it makes a real bottleneck at S minus. So if you have a great S minus filly, great, race it in grade restricted races, which again the teams acknowledge they want to get away from. I support them in that endeavor. I think it's hard. I think they realize it's hard. But if we race our S minuses fillies in those grade restricted races, the allowances are at best splitting hairs against A's, A pluses. There's really not a great spot to race those. So I think that's the population we need to solve for. And then what has changed since Crown had gone up? Again, it went up 70 cents. Did I ever sell the top? No. Will I ever sell the top? No. Did I sell the bottom? Yeah, probably. Will I always sell the bottom? More times than not. But the common refrain and the expectations and the wishes for the blog are always going to be claimers is like the best level footing that you're ever going to have for racing, because it doesn't matter what grade your horse is. We can see A pluses beat S's in claimers. It doesn't matter how many preferences your horse has. Preferences are a function of race math, no different than the underlying stats are a function of race math. What we've never solved for is increasing pricing, which we've seen with 1, demand for horses, but 2, crown pricing, where good S minus colts can no longer race in even 100K claimers because they'll get claimed. Oh, woe is me. My S minus colt got claimed for 100,000 derby. Like, I don't expect anybody's sympathy, but at the end of the day, like, eventually people are going to stop racing them. If crown keeps going up, there is a certain point in time people just wouldn't put the S minuses in there. For us, it's an effective way to move supply. We have 199 horses. We will get 75 more horses on Monday. Claimers are our friend. We benefit more from claimers than most other stables do. Again, another bias. So in prior conversations with Fib and the team, it seemed like they were lukewarm on higher entry fee claimers because the higher entry fee claimers we'd had at the time were the after dark races. And the context of that is if you race an after dark race, you're more or less using 2 days of racing, because 24 hours without injury would mean you would have to wait to the following day. And even if you were going to try to do like the 23 hours where it's kind of safe to race, if you're racing at, call it 10 o'clock local time, there aren't that many races in that first or that last hour of the next day that you can race that can fit your horse. So I think higher entry fee claimers, higher claimer amounts will help these things. We still haven't solved for the gender disparity in claimers. There probably needs to be a place to race fillies and claimers, but in the same races, not separate races. I don't think we have a high enough horse population to have filly only claimers yet. So if there was a function of colts carried 2 more pounds than fillies and claimers because we said a subgrade is worth about 2 pounds. I think most people believe that to be true. So even if the claim amount is the same, a filly from a subgrade lower could race with a colt from a subgrade higher. Does that offset the valuation difference between a filly and a colt? It might not, but would someone race a filly there because of that and try to win? Maybe. The other way to address that could potentially be have just a higher claim amount. So if it's a 100K claimer, have that 100K be applicable to colts and have it be 150K or 175K applicable to fillies. Like eventually, and we'll get there sooner than a lot of people think. Like the gender disparity is always about fillies. I need fillies. I need to build up my stable. I need to get more horses. But eventually, like racing outcomes are going to be what matters. And if racing outcomes are all that matters, then the gender of the horse matters less, as long as the horse quality itself is neutral, which right now it is. Obviously, in real life, you don't see many fillies win the Kentucky Derby. It's been quite a long time if it's ever happened. You don't even see them run there. So there are ways to solve for those types of things. But the other thing is, I think the team, if I had it on my wish list, would address in the blog is the other thing we're seeing a lot of is we're seeing the same exact horses in the same exact races. And that's an oversimplification, but it really isn't. So if there's a 12 horse race, and anybody in the audience can back me up on this, but at least I've got the platform, I'm going to use it. If it's an S- restricted race, which I just told you is like the hardest place to find a horse or a race for, I promise you I could give you a half dozen examples of S- that we have that have raced against 4 other S- in the same race as those 4 other S- in like 4 of their last 6 races. In the real world, they're racing less. I understand this. Like a horse in its 2-year-old season or its 3-year-old season might race like 8 to 12 times total. We're racing 20 plus. We get the benefit of racing 20 plus times. I appreciate that by the team for letting us race more. I'm not saying let us race less, but I think there's a way for the schedule to address this such that you could create more variability in race fields. Right now, the previous blog by Richie or ChatGPT Richie was to provide coverage over a period of time for each archetype, for each grade. And I think they did a great job of saying, like, we're going to have this many A pluses at LTS in this season. So we need this percentage of races to be A plus restricted races at LTS. Like, I don't think that they're wrong there, but is there an opportunity for them to say, instead of saying every 3 days coverage or every 2 days coverage or every 6 days coverage, because I know they've suggested that the coverage bandwidth is going to change a little bit. Instead of that, could they say, we'll give you 2 options that you could choose between, rather than this is the race for you. This is your coverage race. You said you wanted to be a 7 to 9 furlong horse. This is your race. Instead of basically telling you what race to enter, could they give you 2 options such that if you know that you're not the best at something, but you're pretty damn good, you could take the lesser option. So let's say one has a 4K entry and the other one has a 2,500 entry or a 3K entry. If I know the best horse is going to be in that 4K entry, because why wouldn't they be? I could take the 2,500 entry or the 3K entry. I don't have to face that best horse. I have some more win equity. I get some more variability in results, because we're seeing in a lot of cases where the podium is more or less the exact same day over day. And this is not me saying like we never win these. We do win a lot of them. Like Juniper Infused, the horse we sold, is a perfect example of that. That horse crushed in S- grade restricted races. And if there was a grade restricted race at RTF between 0% and 60% of 9 furlongs and 12 furlongs, you knew Juniper Infused was going to be in the race. Because my point back or suggestion to the team would be, let's give someone else that has an RTF S- a chance to not face Juniper Infused in a race. And right now we do not have that. Let me get back to chat. Bryce is saying things that I don't always know if are true, so I want to make sure that I read these. Stens will be happy. This is the comment that caught my eye on the other screen. Stens will be happy, I think, when new schedule is out. And then Tom trying to hold his feet to the fires. Yeah, higher entry claimers are coming. That's fine. That's part of it. That's part of it. That's not everything, because so we still got a pretty good crowd here. Like, I'm willing to make concessions, and I understand that. Like I said earlier, like claimers, we crush claimers. We're putting out more horses than anybody not named Soulmates and his conglomeration and Soul Big Brain and their consolidated entity. Like, the more claimers, the more high entry fee claimers, like, I benefit. I personally benefit. This is my bias. And that's where I'm saying, I understand you have a certain pool of crown to divvy up over a racing season. And there's some nuances to this. Like what I just talked about for the S- restricted races and the A+ restricted races is we're seeing a lot of like V1, V2 of those races because they are in high demand. And people know I can duck Juniper Infused in the S- grade restricted races and just wait for the V1 of the same type of race, which is also costing crown, and people are doing that intentionally. So is there a way to save crown by broadening your offerings and trying to dissuade people from creating V1s, V2s, which cost crown the same way? But I also acknowledge that within claimers, there are other ways that you can solve for, okay, how do we increase the claimer amount with the same pool of crown that we have and more horses racing, which if we don't have this season, because obviously the Gen 0 8-year-olds are going to retire. So maybe this is like the one season we don't have more horses, but every other season we're going to have a lot more horses. So you have the same pool of crown, you have more horses every season, horses move up every season. How do you divvy that up equitably? I think claiming races is the most equitable way to race, because it's not just the best S- or the A+ that A is duking it out. You can have a really good A face a really good A+ or maybe even S- or mediocre S-, and they can be on equal footing in that because their quality is determined by the market price of that horse. And if the horse is too good to race there, it gets claimed, which gives marketplace fees, which gives Derby stimulus back to everybody. Like, everybody wins when a horse is claimed, even if I never win because I never actually get a claimed horse to work in my favor. But circling back up, so how do you address all those increasing things with the same constraints on the crown you have to give out? I think there's 2 or 3 things that could be in some level implemented. And one I've talked about before, like if we're worried about people don't like higher entry fee claimers because people are abusing them, they're farming them, they're racing 175K claimers with Bs. Like, 1, I don't think that's happening anymore. But 2, if we're worried about people farming claimers at a higher entry fee, they're farming it because the amount of crown they're going to earn for entering that race. And the amount of crown each horse earns for the race they enter is because of their proportion of the number of entrants in a given race. So if you're 1 out of 16, you get a better amount of crown than you would if it was 1 out of 8 entry fee equal. So one suggestion would be just to make the claimers, instead of out of 12 or instead of out of 14, make them out of 10 or make them out of 8. Don't change anything else, because you're saying the entry fee is prescribed, how much crown is allocated to that race, and if there was 10 horses, each horse would get that. People are trying to find margins of, oh, there's only 8 out of 12 in here and I'm going to get more crown. So if you take that incentive away and say, instead of 8 out of 12, you got 8 out of 10, or you got instead 8 out of 8, people aren't going to farm that anymore. Most people are going to hate that solution. But it's one that works. The other one that would work, that people probably wouldn't hate as much, is keep the entry fee the way it is, keep the field size the way it is, just increase the claim amount. So if we have a 3,800 entry fee claimer, that is what would normally be 100K. I think that is the ratio. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Keep that race. Nothing wrong with that race. That race will run. That race will fill. But also have a 3,800 or 3,800 entry fee claimer that is 150K or 175K or a 200K claimer. So even if I'm not making more money racing my horse, I'm more comfortable racing my horse because it can compete there, it can win there, and I'm less likely to lose my horse. Like, there are S- colts that if I enter in a 100K claimer, the first race is a 2-year-old, they're going to get claimed. Woe is me again. Again, we benefit more from claimers than anybody else. But then what do I do with those horses other than sell them to someone else that's going to face the same exact problem that I face? They can put them in grade restricted races, I guess. But I don't think they're going to find any more meaningful luck there. And then the other piece of it is, option 3 would be just to change the crown ratio associated with those races. So as far as I can tell, crown is allocated to races regardless of the race type. It's based on the entry fee of the race. So you can have a grade 1 that's a $100 entry fee, and it's going to get the same amount of crown. If it was, let's say it's an 8-horse 100 entry, it's going to get, the race itself is going to get the same amount of crown as a $50 16 entry race would. I'm saying leave the graded stuff alone, leave the graded stakes alone for the G1, G2, G3, but say claimers operate on, I've tried to make my bias super fucking obvious. Claimers help us. I just want to place the race horses. I want to put horses in races that get claims so that it generates fees for the community as a whole. But ultimately it comes down to, I need to be able to race them. We have a lot of horses that we simply can't race. And in most cases, those are fillies. So like, I think the same problem that I started this with before I got into like options 1, options 2, option 3 is there's just a lot of fillies that you can't race anywhere. We have an S filly, composite fleet figure of 68, really good preferences. The preference Nazis would love that. 7 preferences. He's got third once out of 10 times. Like, I'm done racing that horse. Like, I bet it's a very valuable asset. I bet someone would give me a lot of money for it. I'm not racing that anywhere. But if there was a claimer that actually was conducive to racing a filly in a claimer, I would race it there. That won't be the only one. Brooklyn Baby, 2-year-old S-, not as good of a composite fleet figure. Hasn't hit the board in 5 starts. I'm done racing that horse. Endless Summer, 2-year-old, actually better fleet figure than the last one. Second once in six tries. I'm done racing that horse. I'm not going to sell these horses to people. They're fillies. I'm going to keep them. I'm going to breed them. But is that what everybody wants? Or do we want a place for those horses to race and they can get claimed by someone else? If I stuck any of those even in any of those in a 225K claimer, they get claimed instantaneously by 10 stables and 15 other alt stables. So those are the things that I would love to see captured in the blog. Again, I think what's new tonight in my sentiment is I would like to get away from racing the same horses against the same horses as many times as we do. Like, I can pull up a horse, not the namesake sire, unfortunately, and this one will be this one will get sold. So if anybody's trying to do the Juniper Infused, this is probably a better horse, and this will definitely get sold for the things I talked about. I don't want to race a horse. I don't want to be the one to find out whether or not it's economical to race through the 4-year-old and 5-year-old season. It's a good horse, but if I look through its S- races, I bet you I can find the same, call it 3 S- horses in every one of these races. So we'll start Good Omen Challenge Stakes. Forest, Juno Beach, old horse of ours, all summer long, old horse of ours. I was looking for one more. I did not see it there. Thornbush, Bored Ape, old horse of ours. There's Forest again. There's Juno Beach again. Then you get the A- as farming it. There's Forest again. There's Mango Mojito, which was in one of the last two. Willow Lane, old horse of ours. We're not seeing... There's Mango Mojito again. There's All Summer Long again, old horse of ours. There's Apollo 8, old horse of ours. There's Juno Beach, old horse of ours. There's Willow Lane, old horse of ours. Your Street Riccatoni was in 2 or 3 of these. It's the same races over and over and over again. There's Forest again. There's Rags again, which we didn't call it before. Old Joe has been in a few of these. So I like the coverage. But is the coverage putting us in the same spot the other game really struggled with? The other game was not schedule-based. It was lobby-based, which meant if there were horses in the lobby, the race was going to run with those horses. What scheduling allows you to do is allows you the opportunity to get away from that. But it only allows you the opportunity to get away from that if there's actual opportunity to get away from it and still run your horse in a place that you think you can run your horse. So those are the things that I wish were covered a little bit in the blog, and I'm not expecting that because that's probably a bigger pivot than what anybody else was expecting in the blog. So let me get caught up on chat again, probably in the last 10 minutes here. So if there are any other questions or comments, let me know. Blue Idol said, wait, I sold all my horses for claimers. I mean, yay, great idea. Yeah. So, I mean, and we will stream. We'll stream Monday, like the second foals drop. I'll show you our 75 new foals. We'll retire what fillies we have. I don't know if we'll retire many colts. We don't have that many that I plan to use for breeding. So it'll probably be filly retirements, age 0 reveals, and some of those things. But if we want to try to say, like, what should you be looking for in the next week, or what should you be looking for in the next couple of days, of like eventually age and where a horse is in the life cycle, that is the stimulus era of PFL, like eventually that's going to matter. So I don't think personally, and I haven't listed many horses or bought any horses in like 3 weeks. Anybody that knows us knows that most times we list what we're willing to sell on the filly side the first day of the window, and it's like the absolute horsepower fire sale. And then anything else that we sell is normally by request. I think that's going to change this window, but I want to make sure the video doesn't play there, so I'm gonna pull up a lobby instead. I don't think we're gonna fire sell anything, but if you're looking for things and things you can do, there's risk involved. I mean, Bryce has maybe tipped his hand a little bit, but if there's like an inefficiency in the market right now, it's not an S minus Phillies. I just showed you like 6 that I don't know what to do with. So if I don't know what to do with them, and I would still sell them to you for like 300-400K, what are you going to do with them other than breed them? Like, that doesn't seem like a great use of an asset. It doesn't seem like a great use of your derby. I think the market's pretty efficient on Colts right now because like the best S minuses can't race in the 100K claimers without getting claimed. They can race in S minus restricted races, but like if you want to anticipate, if you want to like try to be ahead of the curve, again, this is speculation. I don't know this for sure, but I still feel like the team's probably going to solve for the Colts aspect of this. I don't know if they're going to solve for the Philly aspect of this. I really don't, because I think it's hard. I don't think it's an easy thing to solve for. But if you want to say like the Colt I sold, Juniper Infused, I sold because one, I wouldn't race it in 100K claimers. You might have like the Doughboy 225K special or 275K special. You could race it in once a week, maybe if the preferences were right. It can race S minus restricted or maybe even grade G1, G2, G3. Like that's kind of a special asset. The S minus Colts just below that, where they can't race in 100K without getting claimed. They can't be Juniper Infused. There's the blog that comes out whenever it comes out. Does it give them 125K or 150K, 175K, 200K? Does it give them more options to race? And is that part of the market squeezed a bit because the people that own those assets currently realize they can't race them without losing them, and they can't win the true grade restricted races? So I think that's one avenue of opportunity. And then the other is always going to be age matters. Like, we're still a couple months away from, so you have to play it forward. So if the incentives are going to roll off at the end of April of next year, and a horse is born as a 0-year-old, for them to race as a 4-year-old, how many months do you have to work back from there? Because if we think a horse is in its peak through the 4-year-old season, that's really the end of the clock. And that doesn't mean the team can't change it. That does not mean they can't add incentives. They can divvy up their portion of crown, or they can change. You know, when we concocted this plan, crown was 6 cents. Now it's 56 cents. The amount of crown that's going to go into each race is going to go down. Now, I think that would be risky, but it would be within the realm of possibilities of things that they could do to extend the window. So instead of ending in the end of April, it extends the following April. There are some things like that. So it's whatever you want to anticipate is going to change. But I do think, and this is why I wanted to stream today, and I thought we were going to have it, I think we're going to see changes that affect the market, but the market will be very slow to adjust because we still can't snuff out the preference Nazis. They're still alive and well. We saw an A+ sell for 440K today. So that was a 1-year-old. So it can race. It can race on Monday. Would I buy that? Would I advise anybody to buy that? No. Would I sell an A+ 909 for that? Yes. But it is what it is. That's what happened. And that tells me there are still inefficiencies in the market. So age was the other factor of that. So the one benefit that horse had, other than actually proving it was a good racer, which it never did, and would maybe have justified the price a little bit. Like if you have a horse that's 8 wins in 12 starts and 2 seconds and a third, like hits the board all the time, wins all the time, like then maybe you can start justifying the price tag a little bit. I think people are paying such a premium on unraced, unnamed things, partially maybe because they want to name it and they don't want a horse named Juniper something or another from us. But at this point, like, sometimes I just want someone to prove something's good, and absent that, buy something that is coming of age earlier, because I don't think the market is pricing that in. Like, I think if you were to look tonight, I don't know this for a fact, but if you were to look, my suspicion is, like, if you looked at any given range, so call it S minus fillies or A plus colts, the difference between the 1 year old and the 0 year old isn't as meaningful as it should be, because you're going to have increased competition every season, and now going forward more than ever, you're going to have, like, just better horses. So if an S minus was special 2 months ago or a month ago or even now, you be the determinator of what is special. The fact is, there's a lot more S minuses that are going to be created, so it's really hard to be special at whatever you thought was special 2 months ago. So even if you're not worried about the stimmies rolling off, you should be worried about, like, your cohort, the population around you, and how good your horse is within that population. And I'll never convince people, I've resigned to that, but while preferences matter, I can find you a half dozen 4 to 6 preference horses that are better than almost all of the 9 of 9 preference horses. So that seems like a natural kick in the nuts for the preference Nazis, as I'm one to do. And we'll have a lot of them. Don't get me wrong. We used a preference RTF S Colt of ours for RTF, and we sell a lot from RTF. So we'll have a lot of supply for the preference Nazis. I don't believe it. I've got a lot of high preference horses that can't fucking do shit on the track. So if people want them, we'll make them available. We'll price them in accordance with how people are pricing high preference horses. I would encourage you to probably just buy something that can race. Claim something in Claimers that is good. Claimers gets competitive if they're like 10 to 12 claims on a horse. What you could do is, let's say you lost out on a claimer and a 100K claimer. Let's say the team delivers 150K claimers. You claimed it, 6 other people claimed it. You didn't win the claim. That person paid 150K plus 5% marketplace fees. Offer him 200K for, like, the second he won the claim. He hasn't even raced it yet. If you're willing to claim it at call it 160K, are you not willing to pay 200K for it? You have to determine that. But if you could tell me, as a person that won the claim, which I never win, it's the rejection committee, not the selection committee. But had I won the claim for, call it 160K, and you're offering me 200K to do nothing, I get 40K to do nothing other than list the horse, I think people are more likely to accept those types of deals. And you could have a better insight that you're getting a better horse than if you buy something unnamed that you name How Now Brown Cow. Like, I get naming is important if that's your shtick, but I want a horse that can deliver. And the best way to know that is to review race results, make sure you're buying it at an early enough age, make sure it's competitive within its cohort. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. I appreciate, like, the fucking no notice. I expected no one to be here, but the no notice, big audience, lots of comments. We love this shit. As always, the replay can be found on YouTube, and like I said, I'll be back Monday, regardless of whether or not Doughboy's got 7 high pinky personalities on his stream. We'll stream against them Monday. Foal's drop. We'll be there. So again, thanks everybody. Love you all. See ya next time.